The successor has been found.
72 souls depend on you now. Can you carry that weight?
I fell off a mountain and landed in a world that needs me.
The trail up the mountain was steep, and Ren was losing the battle against it. His hiking group pressed ahead with ease, while he lagged behind, drenched in sweat, legs burning. He was a novelist, not an athlete. Two young girls at the top of the ridge giggled down at him. "So weak," one said. His editor flashed a smug smile. "The great novelist can't even outclimb kids. What happened to all that protagonist energy you write about?" "I'm a writer," Ren muttered between ragged breaths. "My job is to sit, think, and occasionally reach for snacks." Nobody said anything about mountains. He pictured his apartment, the couch, the game console, a cold drink sweating on the table. When he got back, he swore he would bury his editor in revision drafts, thick enough to make the man weep. Then the railing snapped. Metal cracked under his grip. His feet left the ground. The cliff swallowed him whole, wind tearing past his ears as the sky spun and shrank above him. So this is how it ends, he thought. Not with a deadline, but with a cliff. Darkness took him. Pain dragged him back. A dull ache wrapped around every bone like a vice. Ren opened his eyes to a ceiling of stretched animal hide. Firelight danced across it in orange streaks. The air smelled of earth and dried blood, thick and sour. His wrists were bound tight behind his back, with rough cord that bit into his skin every time he shifted. A woman sat across from him, blue hair past her shoulders, sharp, watchful eyes, framed by a face that might have been pretty if it were not studying him, like he was something on a plate. Two pointed ears rose from her head, like a fox's. A bushy tail swayed behind her. She spoke in a language he could not understand, her tone casual, almost playful. She poked his arm, squeezed his bicep like she was testing fruit at a market. Then she mimed eating and rubbed her stomach, making a satisfied sound. Every survival instinct Ren had ever written about fired at once. "Calm down," he told himself. "She's not going to eat you, probably." The woman drew a short blade. Firelight caught the edge. Before Ren could scream, she leaned forward and cut his bindings in one clean stroke. She sheathed the weapon and grinned as if to say, "Relax." Ren rubbed his wrists, stared at the fox ears, at the tail, at the primitive tent around him. No glass, no concrete, no electricity. His clothes were torn, his body ached, and the last thing he remembered was falling off a cliff on Earth. The realization landed like a stone in still water. Did I transmigrate into another world? He was a novelist. He had written dozens of stories about people waking up in strange worlds with strange powers and stranger companions. He knew the formula by heart. He just never expected to live it. Outside, the camp sprawled before him, and it was nothing like anything he had ever seen. Hide-covered tents arranged in rough circles among towering trees. People moved between structures dressed in animal pelts and woven leaves, tending fires, hauling dried meat, sharpening tools made of bone and stone. But they were not ordinary people. Some had curved horns rising from their foreheads. Others had feathered wings folded against their backs, tails that dragged through the dirt, or ears shaped like a cat's that swiveled toward every sound. Ren stood very still in his torn sportswear. Foliage, animal skins, no metal anywhere. He swallowed. "I didn't just transmigrate, I landed in a primitive world." A tall man approached before Ren could process the thought further. Broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, square jaw. Two black horns jutted from his forehead, each the length of a hand. He spoke in that same incomprehensible language, his voice low and commanding, and grabbed Ren's arm before he could protest. The fox-eared woman trailed behind, chatting with the horned man as if dragging strangers through camp was an ordinary errand. She called him father once. He corrected her sharply, telling her to use his title in front of outsiders. They walked deeper into the settlement. Villagers stopped what they were doing to stare. Whispers followed like wind through dry grass. No horns, no wings, no tail, no claws. Ren was the strangest thing in a camp full of strange things, and every pair of eyes made sure he knew it. They brought him to the largest tent. Inside, tribal leaders sat around a low fire, their faces lined with exhaustion and worry. The smell hit Ren first, a sharp, sour stench mixed with the copper tang of blood. At the center sat an old man with white hair falling to his shoulders, a thick beard, and eyes sharp and black and burning with something that had nothing to do with age. The elder shaman. The discussion around the fire was urgent. Voices overlapped. A man with red horns, scarred across one cheek, waved Ren inside and spoke to the elder with heavy concern. "Does he have the talent?" The shaman studied Ren, those black eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, the old man seemed to look straight through him, past skin and bone, into something deeper. Then the world vanished. Ren stood in a void of stars. Before him, a great flame erupted from nothing, roaring upward without heat or sound. And within that flame, something moved, serpentine, massive, scales shimmering between red and gold, its body coiling through fire like it was born from it. Part snake, part dragon, entirely impossible. It turned its gaze on him, and something vast brushed against his mind. Not hostile, curious, like a god noticing a moth and deciding, just this once, not to look away. The tent rushed back. The shaman slumped forward, coughing hard, skin gone pale and waxy. The red-horned man caught him before he hit the ground. He has it, the elder whispered between labored breaths. He can see the flame. And just like that, Ren understood their words. Every syllable clicked into place, as if a locked door in his mind had been thrown open. The language of these people flowed into him, natural and clear, as though he had spoken it his entire life. They wanted him to be their shaman, their next spiritual leader. Wait, Ren said, and the entire tent froze because he had spoken in their tongue. I'm a what? Some of the leaders exchanged uncertain glances. He was young, he was foreign, he had no horns, no markings, no apparent strength. But the shaman had spoken, and the shaman's word was law in matters of the spirit. The fox-eared woman pulled him outside before he could ask more questions. Word had already spread through the camp like fire through dry brush. The red-horned man stepped out behind them. Drac, chieftain of the Ember Fang tribe. His voice boomed across the clearing, steady and absolute. The successor has been found. The tribe endures. Relief washed through the crowd in a wave. Some laughed, others wept openly. An old woman pressed her hands together and whispered something that sounded like a prayer. Children tugged at their parents, asking what was happening, and were held tighter in return. Drac spoke quietly to the fox-eared woman. Lena, take the successor around. Show him everything. Then to Ren. If you need anything, tell her. Lena tugged him along by the sleeve, already talking before they had taken 3 steps. This is the Ember Fang tribe. Our totem is the Ember Dragon. The strongest in the tribe is the shaman. After that comes my father, the chieftain, then the captains, then the hunters and warriors. Everyone else falls below. She said it matter-of-factly, the way someone explains the weather. Then her voice changed. We used to be strong, 300 people, 32 hunters, ancestral lands by the river, caves for shelter carved into the hillside, warm and dry, food for everyone, children running through the clearings, the kind of life you do not appreciate until it is ripped away. Her expression darkened, fox ears pressing flat against her skull. Then the Iron Viper tribe attacked. 15 days ago, they came at night. They destroyed our totem shrine, killed our old chieftain, drove us from our land. We lost over 200 people, warriors, elders, children. She stopped walking. Her fists were clenched at her sides. Now there are 72 of us, 11 hunters, no ancestral land, no walls, no shrine. We are living in a forest clearing and calling it home because we have nothing else. Silence hung between them. Ren looked at the camp with new eyes. Tents patched with scraps of hide, cook fires burning low, children too thin, too quiet, hunters sitting at the perimeter, sharpening weapons with the focused silence of people who had learned that rest was a luxury they could not afford. 72 survivors clinging to a clearing with nothing but stubbornness and the memory of what they had lost. Given the chance, Lena said, voice dropping fierce and low. We will take it all back. You will, Ren said. He meant it more than he expected to. That night, alone in the quiet of the camp, something stirred at the edge of Ren's mind. A faint warmth, like an ember catching air. Not the totem fire he had seen in the shaman's vision. Something else entirely. A presence that had been dormant, waiting for the exact moment it chose to wake. It did not speak in words he could name. It announced itself the way dawn announces itself, by simply being there when the darkness lifts. A force settled into him, vast and patient, humming behind his thoughts like a machine that had just powered on. He could feel its edges, its structure, even if he could not yet understand its shape or its rules. Ren sat still for a long time. He was a novelist from Earth who had spent his adult life writing about heroes conquering impossible odds. Now the odds were his, and no one was going to write him a happy ending. He flexed his fingers, took a slow breath, looked out through the tent flap at the dark shapes of the camp, the low glow of a dying fire, the silhouettes of people who had lost everything and still woke up every morning to fight for one more day. A man who writes about courage long enough starts to wonder if he has any of his own. Ren was about to find out. Whatever came next, whatever the ceremony demanded, whatever enemies waited beyond the tree line, he would face it. Not because he was brave, not because he was strong, but because 72 people had placed their hope in a man who fell off a mountain, and he refused to let them fall too. Ren barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the faces of the tribe floated behind his eyelids. 72 survivors counting on him, a dying shaman, a war they had already lost once, and somewhere in the back of his mind, that strange warmth pulsing through his fingertips like a second heartbeat. Then, just before dawn, a familiar tingle crept through his skull. A translucent interface blinked into existence in front of him, holographic, glowing faintly blue. A calendar hung in midair, and beneath it, text scrolled with the calm efficiency of a tutorial screen. Ren stared at it, then let out a slow breath. As a writer, I knew this would happen. System plugins. He had written this scene 100 times. The transmigrated protagonist awakens a cheat system, daily rewards, monthly bonuses, a rare chance at premium assistance. It was textbook isekai, and now it was his life. He asked the system what it could do. The answer was underwhelming. 12 assistance uses per day. Healing a hand-sized wound cost 3 of them, and the rest of the functions were locked behind a timer that would not open for another year. 1 year later, Ren muttered. He pinched the bridge of his nose. The tribe did not have a year. The shaman was coughing blood. Their food supply ran thin every week, and somewhere out there, the Iron Viper tribe still held their ancestral land. He tested whether anyone else could see the interface. The system confirmed it was visible only to him. Good. The last thing he needed was to explain floating menus to people who had not invented metal yet. The tent flap rustled, and Mira appeared beside him without a sound. He flinched hard enough to knock his shoulder against the tent post. "Do you not make noise when you walk?" She looked at him like the question was beneath answering. Walking silently is the most basic skill for a warrior. She told him she had gotten up early to brief him on the tribe, that her father wanted him brought up to speed before the day's work began. Her expression was serious, almost rehearsed, as though she had been practicing what to say. Ren tried to stand, but the world tilted sideways. His vision blurred at the edges, and he swayed on his feet, barely catching himself. Mira grabbed his arm. "Enough. I will take you to rest." She steered him back down before he could argue, her grip firm and impatient. Ren did not resist. He had not eaten since arriving in this world, and the exhaustion of everything that had happened was finally catching up. He looked around the inside of the tent, a hay bed, a single hide blanket, barely 6 paces wall to wall. The realization hit him fresh. "I live here?" Mira confirmed it with a short nod. The spot was his to use while he recovered. Ren lay back and let out a long breath. For the first time since falling off that mountain, his body actually relaxed. The hay was rough, but it was horizontal, and right now that was enough. His expression softened, tension draining from his shoulders. Then he noticed the smell, faint, warm, a little sweet. He mentioned, half to himself, that the tent smelled a bit like milk. Not bad, just noticeable. Mira's entire face turned the color of her horn. "Don't sniff it!" She practically shouted it, arms raised, cheeks burning. "And don't flip through anything in here." Ren blinked, caught completely off guard by the outburst. He asked why. She crossed her arms, ears red, jaw tight. "Because this is my place." The silence that followed was enormous. Ren looked at the hay bed, at the blanket, at the small personal belongings tucked against the tent wall that he had not noticed before. A wooden comb, a strip of dried leather, a small tube that might have been hers. He was sleeping in her tent, her actual personal tent, and she had given it up for him without saying a word about it. Before he could respond, she turned and left, the tent flap swinging shut behind her. Ren stared at the hide ceiling and let the silence settle. Mira's outburst still echoed in his ears. Her tent. He was lying in her tent, on her bed, surrounded by her things, and she had said nothing about it until he pushed. He turned on his side. The small personal belongings along the wall suddenly felt louder than before. The wooden comb, the leather strip, the faint, warm smell he had stupidly mentioned out loud. "I'm in serious trouble," he muttered, living together. The words sat in his chest like a stone. She was a warrior with horns and red eyes who could probably snap him in half, and somehow the tribe had decided the two of them should share a roof. He pressed his palms over his face. "Even though she has horns," he said quietly, reasoning with no one. "Her face and figure are not bad." He caught himself immediately, shook the thought loose, focused. The tent flap had barely stopped swaying when Mira reappeared, cheeks still flushed. She stood in the entrance with her arms crossed, refusing to look at him directly. "Who wants to live with you?" The words came out sharper than she intended. She shifted her weight, jaw tight. "I'm only staying for a little while tonight. I have patrol." Ren studied her. The embarrassment was real. She was mature in how she carried herself, confident and direct, but the flush creeping up her neck told a different story. She got flustered easily. Before he could respond, she turned and ducked back out into the night. The tent flap swung once and went still. Alone again, Ren sat up. "All right, everyone's gone. Time for business. The translucent interface flickered to life, casting faint blue light across the hide walls. He tapped the daily check-in. Text scrolled across the display. Intermediate assistance package. Healing skill, level 1. He blinked. Intermediate? Yesterday was low grade. He leaned closer. The skill had a level indicator next to it. Level 1 meant it could climb. That changed things. He pulled up his status panel, and the optimism died. Stamina, strength, speed. Every number sat at the bottom of the scale, barely registering. Each stat was a monument to years of hunching over a desk, writing stories about heroes, while his own body turned to dust. Why are all my attributes this low? He already knew the answer. Too many years lying down. Too many years doing nothing physical. His body had the conditioning of a man who considered walking to the kitchen a workout. I have to start exercising, he said to the empty tent. Night deepened over the camp. Beast roars rolled across the valley in long, guttural waves, distant enough to ignore, but close enough to remember. The fires burned low. Inside the chieftain's tent, Drac sat across from the shaman. The old man's breathing came thin and uneven, each exhale carrying a faint rattle. Drac spoke first. He wanted to know about Ren, where the outsider came from, whether the Iron Viper tribe could have sent him as a plant, a spy wearing a harmless face. The shaman shook his head slowly. The Iron Viper tribe could not raise someone with a nature that clear. He paused, choosing his words. I looked into his soul, Drac. It is not merely free of malice. It is pure, genuinely pure. I have not seen that in a long time. He described what he had sensed. An image seemed to form in the air between them, the outline of a soul unmarked by darkness. No totem had ever touched it. No corruption lived inside it. As long as he remains virtuous, the shaman continued, protect him. He may be more important than either of us understands. Drac said nothing for a long moment. Then he nodded. A coughing fit seized the shaman without warning. He turned away, but not fast enough. Blood spotted his palm, bright and wet against weathered skin. Drac was on his feet instantly. Great shaman, you have to take care of yourself. Your body, the old man waved him off with a trembling hand. He looked at the blood on his fingers, and his expression shifted. Not fear, regret. I blame myself, he said quietly. If I had been stronger, the tribe would not have suffered as it did. Our weakness brought this upon us. He wiped his hand on his robe. We have run out of time, Drac. He straightened, and something harder settled into his voice. The inheritance ceremony. I want to move it forward. 3 days from now. Drac's jaw tightened. 3 days? We haven't finished investigating him. We don't know. We know enough. The shaman's eyes held steady. In the entire tribe, only he has the talent. The others do not. If I wait any longer, there may be nothing left of me to pass on. The fire popped. Drac exhaled through his nose and accepted it. A scuff sounded outside the tent. Then silence. Too much silence. Drac was at the flap in 2 strides. He pulled it aside and found Mira crouched just beyond the entrance, frozen mid-step, eyes wide. Were you eavesdropping? No. She straightened up fast, brushing dust off her knees. I was on patrol. I was just passing by. I didn't hear anything. Drac stared at her. She stared back, radiating the specific energy of someone who had heard every word. He let out a long breath. It doesn't matter what you heard. He held the flap open wider. Come inside. I have something important to tell you. Mira's eyes lit up. An important mission. Her father was finally going to trust her with real responsibility, something worthy of her skills. She could feel it. Whatever the task, she said, standing tall, I will absolutely complete it. Drac looked at her for a long beat. Then he spoke. Marry the young sorcerer and have children. The more, the better. The words hung in the air. Mira's expression froze. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. The phrase echoed around her like it had physical weight. Have children. Have children. Have children. She blinked. Color flooded her face from her jaw to the tips of her ears. Dad, what are you talking about? The shout cracked across the camp. She jabbed a finger at him, all the composure gone. I only want to marry someone who can beat me in a fight. That's the rule. Drac folded his arms. And who exactly is going to beat you? You're stronger than half the warriors already. He's too skinny, she fired back. There's no way he could beat me, not even close. Drac's expression shifted to something tired and familiar. You're already 19, Mira. You can't wait forever. She planted her feet. I don't want to get married. I want to get stronger. I want revenge. Her voice dropped, and for a moment, the playfulness left it entirely. That matters more. Then, the defiance surged back. She grinned, sharp and reckless. Besides, if anyone should marry the sorcerer, it's you. You'd make a lovely pair. Drac's spirit mark flared. Get back here. She was already running, laughing, bare feet slapping the packed earth. He chased after her, shouting something about respect and hitting her backside. But she was faster, and they both knew it. The camp watched them weave between tents, father and daughter trading insults at full volume, and for a brief moment, the weight of everything lifted. From the entrance of his tent, the shaman watched them go. The firelight caught his face, softening the deep lines, and something warm moved behind his eyes. "You still look so full of life," he said quietly. "I want so badly to watch you grow up." He looked down at his hands. They were thinner than they had been a season ago. The tremor was worse at night. He closed his fist slowly, feeling the last of his strength gather there, like embers refusing to go out. "I will keep trying," he whispered, "for the new children, for whatever comes next." 3 days. The inheritance ceremony was 3 days away, and the old shaman intended to still be breathing when it arrived. The 3 days passed faster than Ren expected, but the first morning nearly killed him before the ceremony ever could. He woke shivering, teeth rattling, beast hide pulled tight around his shoulders, and still not enough. The teepee was a wreck. Holes punched through the walls, let in every gust of mountain wind, and the hide covering had gaps wide enough to stick a fist through. He curled tighter, breath fogging in front of his face. "I almost froze to death," he muttered. He examined the damage. Whoever had lived here before had either left in a hurry or never cared about the cold. Neither option comforted him. He crawled outside into weak morning light. The camp was stirring. Somewhere a fire crackled. The platform in the clearing stood taller than yesterday, its frame wrapped in fresh vine. Mira was crossing the camp with an armload of dried wood. He called out to her before thinking, "Mira, I need straw." She stopped, turned. Her face did something complicated. A flush crept up her neck, spreading to her cheeks. Her grip on the wood tightened until her knuckles went pale. "I don't want to be with a skinny man like you," she shouted. And the next thing Ren knew, he was on the ground, ears ringing, tasting copper. He sat up, one hand pressed to his jaw. "What are you talking about? I need straw for the holes in my tent." The silence between them stretched like pulled sinew. Mira stared at him. He stared back. "The holes," he repeated, slower, pointing at his wrecked teepee. "Wind comes through. I freeze. Straw covers holes. That is all I want." Her flush deepened from embarrassment now, not anger. She crossed her arms and turned away sharply. "Fine, I will help you carry it." She marched ahead without waiting. Ren picked himself up, rubbing his jaw. He was beginning to understand that in a tribe of warriors, even a misunderstanding could leave bruises. They gathered dried grass and flat pieces of bark from the edge of the camp. As they walked back, something caught Ren's eye. 2 small children curled together on bare ground beneath a lean-to made of sticks. No hide, no covering, just dirt and cold air and each other. He stopped. Why don't they sleep inside? And why is there nothing covering them? Mira glanced at the children, the way someone glances at weather, a fact of life, not worth comment. Most people do not have homes. Animal furs are precious. You have to hunt to get them, and there are never enough. She looked at him. Something softened in her voice, though she clearly did not intend it. "You are the shaman's successor. You matter more than the others. That is why you have a teepee at all." Ren said nothing. He looked at the straw and bark they had gathered, then at the children on the ground, then at his own tent, with its holes and drafts that he had been ready to complain about. He walked to the children and laid the planks over their shelter, pressing them into place so the wind would not tear them away. It was not much, but it would block the worst of the cold. Mira watched him, arms still crossed, head tilted. "Why did you give it to them? You are the future shaman. You are more important than they are." He turned. The morning light was behind him, and his shadow fell long across the camp. "They are equally important. A man who would freeze so children could sleep warm." That was not the kind of shaman Mira had expected. She stood there for a long time after he walked away, arms slowly uncrossing, something shifting behind her eyes. "He is not what I imagined," she said quietly. The shout went up just past midday. A child scrambled onto a rock and pointed toward the tree line, voice cracking with excitement. "They are back! The hunters are back!" The camp erupted. Women and elders moved toward the clearing. Children ran ahead, bare feet slapping against packed earth. Ren followed the current and found himself at the edge of a gathering crowd. Braun emerged from the trees first. He looked like something carved from the mountain itself. Broad, weathered, with a mane of wild gray hair and eyes that had seen too many winters to be surprised by anything. A boar the size of a calf hung across his shoulders as if it weighed nothing. Behind him, the rest of the hunting party carried smaller kills, wild rabbits, lean birds, a second boar. The children swarmed. "So much food!" one shouted, reaching up to touch the boar's rough hide. "Look at the red fur. It looks delicious." An older woman clasped her hands together. "The children will not go hungry tonight. Welcome back." Braun dropped the boar with a thud that shook the ground. He scanned the crowd, spotted Ren, and his eyes narrowed with interest. Later, Ren sat with Mira near one of the cooking fires and asked the question that had been building in his mind since morning. "How does the tribe divide the food?" She answered without hesitation, as if reciting a law. "The warriors eat first. They need the strength. Then, the trainees and children get their share. The elders eat wild fruits. They rarely get meat. And the rest of the catch? Half is eaten. Half is dried and stored for when the hunting team rests, or when the weather turns. Ren stared at the fire. The math was brutal. 72 people. Hunts that took 3 days and returned with barely enough. Warriors who needed beast meat just to keep their energy from fading. Elders who chewed roots and called it a meal. If one hunt failed, they starved. If 2 hunts failed back to back, people died. There has to be a better way, he thought. Not just hunting, not just foraging and hoping the forest was generous. He pictured animals penned behind fences, crops growing in rows, a system that did not depend on luck. If you started farming, he said carefully, you could stabilize the food supply, grow things, raise animals. Mira blinked. What is farming? He opened his mouth and then closed it. How did you explain agriculture to someone who had never seen a planted seed? And if he mentioned raising animals for food, they would eat the livestock the first night, one problem at a time. Bronn found them before Ren could untangle the farming question. The old hunter dropped down beside the fire with a grunt and looked at Mira with an expression that was equal parts warmth and mischief. Who is this boy? He jerked his chin toward Ren. I have not seen him before. A slow grin split his weathered face. Did the chief finally pick you a husband? The color that hit Mira's face could have lit a torch. Uncle Bronn, why do you say that? Every single day it is the same thing. When will I get married? Who will I marry? Enough. Bronn laughed, completely unbothered. Then, someone behind them said the words that changed the air entirely. He is the shaman's heir. The laughter stopped. Bronn turned. The hunters turned. Every head within earshot turned. What? Bronn stood. The shaman's heir? Where? Him? A hunter in the back clapped his hands together. That is wonderful. There is hope for the village after all. What followed was something Ren had never experienced and did not know how to handle. Everyone wanted to feed him. Bronn carved a slab of meat from the boar, thick enough to use as a pillow, and pushed it into Ren's hands. The air is too skinny. Eat. Eat a lot. Before Ren could respond, a second hunter added another cut. Take mine too. Please, eat more. A child ran up, barely reaching Ren's waist, ears bright and eyes enormous. The little one held out a strip of dried meat with both hands, grinning so wide his face could barely contain it. Heir brother, I share my meat too. Ren took the offering. His hands were full. His throat was tight. Mira leaned close enough for only him to hear. What did you think? Of course they treat only you like this. You are the future shaman of this tribe. He looked down at the meat piled in his arms, at the child still beaming up at him, at the hunters who had marched for 3 days through dangerous forest and given him the best of what they brought back. Not because they knew him, not because he had earned it, because of a title, because of what he represented, just because I am the shaman. The thought settled in his chest, like a stone dropped into still water. He could feel the weight of it spreading outward, ripple by ripple. These people were not kind to him. They were desperate. They were investing everything they had in the hope that he could save them. 72 people eating scraps and calling it enough. Children sleeping on bare ground. Elders who had not tasted meat in weeks, and all of them looking at him like he was the answer. Ren lifted his head. The sun was going down behind the trees, painting the camp in shades of copper and rust. The fire popped. The child tugged at his sleeve, asking if the meat was good. He could not save them yet. He did not have the power, the knowledge, or the plan. But he had something none of them did. He had a world of ideas locked inside his skull. Farming, weaving, trade, medicine, construction. Things these people had never dreamed of because no one had ever shown them. He bit into the meat. It was tough and gamey, and the best thing he had ever tasted. It is good, he told the child. Thank you. The boy ran off cheering. Mira watched Ren from the corner of her eye, saying nothing, arms crossed again. But the hardness in her face was gone. Something had shifted. Not everything, not yet, but enough. Something had shifted. Not everything, not yet, but enough for Ren to sleep without the cold waking him. He woke to a fire already burning. Meat sizzled over the flames, a cut he had set the night before, turning it slow the way he remembered from another life. Not charred, not raw, cooked through. Pip crouched nearby, watching the meat with enormous eyes, drool catching the firelight. Eat, Ren said. Pip recoiled. I cannot eat the heir's food. His hands flew up. That is meant for you. I am telling you to eat. That makes it right. The boy hesitated, then leaned close, whispering, You will not tell anyone? Ren nodded, and Pip took a bite so enormous it was less eating, and more an act of war against the meat itself. His whole body shuddered with joy. This is incredible. How did you make it taste like this? The truth was, it was tough and stringy. What it needed was salt. As if reading his mind, Pip produced a small tube from his pouch, coarse gray crystals inside. In another world, salt cost nothing. Here it was treasure. Pip explained that only warriors received rations, saved sparingly for emergencies. Use it, the boy insisted. You need it more. Ren pushed it back. Keep it. You will need your strength strength for what is coming. The conversation that followed stripped away whatever hope the morning had built. Inside the main teepee, Drac and Bronn told Ren the full truth. 20 warriors captured by the Iron Viper tribe during the migration. Only 6 trainees left. Hunting grounds so barren that 3-day hunts barely fed the tribe for a week. 15 days of dried meat remained if rationed hard. After that, nothing. And the Iron Vipers? Ren asked. 5 days east, Drac said, jaw tight. 3 if a spirit warrior runs without rest. Hunting alone would not save them. This tribe was bleeding out slowly. Tell me about linen, Ren said. Bronn blinked. Linen is rare. Only the great tribes possess it. The Pale Elk tribe holds a market. 1 roll trades for 300 weight of dried meat. 300 weight for a single roll of cloth. A fortune. A lifeline. I know how to make it. The silence was so complete. Ren could hear the fire breathing. Do I look like I am joking? Drac's eyes burned with something new. Not respect, not loyalty, but raw, desperate hope. Then his voice dropped low. If this is true, you must never speak of it outside this tent. The great tribes guard their linen like they guard their bloodlines. If they learn a tribe this small can produce cloth, they will not trade with us. They will crush us. A secret that could save them or destroy them. Ren nodded. Produce quietly. Trade carefully. Grow before anyone noticed. The market opens in 8 days. Travel takes 3. That gives us 5 to find the plants, harvest, and weave. What plants? Stalks the width of a thumb. Bark that peels into thin strips. Search the riverbanks. Bring anything that matches. Drac and Bronn exchanged one glance. Then both were out of the tent before Ren finished speaking. 5 days. No guarantee they would find the right plants. No guarantee he could weave fast enough. And behind it all, 20 of his people in chains. 5 days east. One crisis at a time. He sorted through the old shaman's belongings alone. Dried herbs, bone carvings etched with symbols the ancient rites let him almost read. Brittle scrolls. Then he found it. A wooden tube sealed with wax. Inside, black liquid. Thick, rich, unmistakable. Ink. In a world where most had never seen a written word, someone had been writing. He stepped outside. The camp moved in its slow rhythm. Children between teepees, an elder mending hide, smoke from 3 fires. He sensed her before he saw her, a prickle at the edge of his awareness, new and strange. A gift from the knowledge that had poured into him during those 3 lost days. You can come out, he said. Mira stepped from behind the teepee, horns catching sunlight, cheeks flushed, chin lifted in a way that tried very hard to look unbothered. My father told me to guard the tent. From behind it, her flush deepened. The old shaman had a priestess. She died fighting the Iron Vipers. Ren studied her. I need a new one. Mira's eyes widened. Then she caught herself, straightened, and spoke with exaggerated composure. I know someone who might be suitable. 5 days to turn thread into survival. A tribe starving. A secret worth killing for. And somewhere east, 20 warriors waiting in the dark. Ren looked out across the camp. The wind carried smoke, dust, and the laughter of children who did not yet know how close to the edge they stood. He had work to do. The work did not wait for him to be ready. That evening, the elder summoned Ren inside the main tent. Firelight carved deep lines into the old man's face. Tomorrow, he said, we hold the inheritance ceremony. He studied Ren for a long moment. Ask your questions. Tonight, I will hide nothing. So Ren asked, what exactly was a sorcerer? The answer was not simple. A sorcerer was the tribe's axis, the one who channeled the ancestral totems, awakened dormant power in others, and stood between his people and extinction. Without one, a tribe was just meat waiting to be taken. Every tribe carried a totem, a spiritual imprint passed from the first ancestors, but totems were not equal. Some burned, some froze, some moved like wind through tall grass. Only a sorcerer could unlock what they held. The spirit warriors, Ren said. They draw strength from this? The elder nodded. Spirit warriors were the mightiest fighters any tribe could produce, capable of killing beasts that would slaughter 10 ordinary men. But even the strongest was incomplete without a sorcerer to carve the spirit mark into their flesh and set the totem's fire blazing inside them. A warrior without a mark was a blade without an edge. Sorcerers carried other gifts too, ancient rites that branched into paths as different as poison and prayer. Some learned to curse, others read futures in smoke and bone. Some healed with a touch, some blessed weapons before battle. Every path demanded years. Every gift carried a cost. Then the elder placed a scroll in Ren's hands. Old leather, cracked at the edges, dense with symbols that seemed to pulse in the firelight. Everything I know of the deeper arts is written here. Ren unrolled it. The symbols blurred. Pressure built behind his eyes, and he had to look away before the dizziness dragged him under. He could not read it, not yet. The ceremony would change that, would give him the eyes to see what the scroll contained. The elder began to cough, not the dry clearing of an old throat, deep, wet, violent. His whole frame shook. Blood flecked his lips. Ren moved without thinking. He pressed his hands against the old man's ribs and reached for the healing technique he barely understood. Warmth gathered in his palms. He pushed it forward. Nothing happened. He pushed harder. The warmth flickered and died like a candle in wind. The coughing slowed on its own, not because of anything Ren had done. The elder wiped his mouth and smiled, thin, knowing, tired, beyond measure. "You will learn," he said quietly, "but not tonight." Ren pulled his hands back, shaking. He had the title. He had fragments of knowledge rattling inside his skull like seeds in a dry gourd. But when it mattered, when a man was bleeding from the inside out right in front of him, he could do nothing. Tomorrow, the ancestors would pour their secrets into him. Tonight, he sat with an old man running out of time, and the fire between them burned low. The old shaman lay still on the furs, breath rattling thin. His white hair pooled around him like spilled milk, but his eyes were open. And when he looked at Ren, there was no fear in them, only a strange, terrible peace. "My wait," the old man whispered, "was not in vain." Ren knelt beside him, hands still warm from the failed healing. The energy had passed through his palms into the old man's chest and done nothing. No change, no recovery, as if the sickness had roots too deep to reach. Why did it not work? The elder did not answer. He gripped Ren's wrist with surprising strength. "Help me up. There are things I must give you while there is still time." They walked together toward the ceremonial platform. Each step cost the old man something he would not get back. He coughed twice, hard enough to double over, but kept moving. "Do you remember what I taught you?" "Every word." The old man smiled. "Then you are ready." A crowd had gathered at the stone platform. Warriors, hunters, mothers with children on their hips, elders on walking sticks. They knew what this was. "Kneel," the elder said. Ren knelt, stone cold beneath his knees, sky wide and pale above. The old shaman turned to his people. He stood straighter than he had in days, drawing on something deeper than bone. His voice carried like the last peal of a bell. 63 years. I have waited 63 years for this moment." He raised his staff. The ancient wood hummed with a resonance Ren felt in his ribs. The inheritance ceremony begins. The tribespeople moved as one, hands lifted, blades drawn across palms. Blood rose in thin ribbons that defied gravity, drifting upward, braiding into a luminous current that spiraled toward the platform's center. The ground trembled. From within that swirling light, something vast began to take shape. "The spirit has come," the elder cried, and 63 years of waiting broke open in his voice. It manifested as an ethereal creature of pure radiance, shifting, luminous, more feeling than form. It coiled around Ren like a living aurora. The heat was not fire, it was memory, the weight of every shaman who had ever knelt on this stone. Ren stared wide-eyed. The light swallowed him whole. He knelt at the center of a fiery aura, body still, spirit burning. The elder pressed his palm to Ren's forehead. Between them, an orb of light bloomed, small, perfect, blinding. Inside it, everything. The history of shamans beyond counting, the secrets of the spirit bond. All of it compressed into a sphere, no larger than a fist. Ren floated in a void that was not darkness, but depth. Stars drifted past. Knowledge settled into him, the way snow settles on a field. Silently, inevitably, covering everything. When he opened his eyes, the crowd watched in hushed reverence. The elder sagged against his staff, spent and smiling. The inheritance had passed. The days that followed were not kind. They moved across harsh terrain toward the ancestral land, rocky paths, thin air. A small figure with horn-like nubs stumbled beside Ren. Mira clutched her stomach. "I am hungry. I have not eaten in 2 days." No one answered. The food was gone. All that remained was the walk and the faith that something waited at the end. That night, under a sky thick with shattered stars, the elder sat hunched over a clay bowl at the edge of camp. The liquid inside glowed faint and sickly green. Divination. A cloaked figure with curved horns stormed toward him and snatched the bowl away. "How many doses have you taken? Have you lost your mind?" "The shaman has broken the taboo," the figure hissed. "He has burned through the last reserves." But the elder only looked at Ren. "Teacher," Ren said softly, "I saw it." The old man nodded. "Then keep it here." A weathered finger pressed against Ren's chest. "Remember everything. Bury it in your heart. Let it grow roots, and one day it will hold you upright when nothing else can." "Will the tribe become strong?" The elder placed his hand on Ren's head. "I believe that with you here, no one will go hungry or cold again." Those words settled on Ren's shoulders, like armor he had not asked for, but could not remove. "I will do it," Ren said. A shadow fell across him before dawn. "Still so weak," a voice said. low, mocking. "How do you plan to protect anyone when you cannot protect yourself?" Ren did not answer. The question was not wrong, but another voice split the morning air, sharp, urgent, already moving. "Braun, let us go together this time." A figure sprinted toward the edge of camp, rallying hunters with desperate energy. "The beasts! The shaman wounded them during the ceremony. They are bleeding. They are close." Braun was already on his feet, stone axe in hand. The camp lurched into motion like a machine that had been waiting for a reason to run. Ren stood. His body ached. His mind still swam with knowledge he had not begun to sort. But the tribe was moving. The beasts were wounded, and somewhere in the gray dawn, a fight was starting that would not wait for him to feel ready. No fight ever did. Ren's eyes snapped open to hide walls and the smell of smoke. He was flat on his back in a tent, with no memory of how he got there. The last thing he recalled was the ceremony, the blinding light, knowledge crashing into his skull like a river breaking through a dam. He sat up and pressed his palm to his forehead. The totemic inheritance had reshaped him from the inside out. His vision was sharper. His limbs felt dense with new strength. Every breath came easier, as though his lungs had doubled in size. He flexed his fingers and felt it, the magic. A low hum of spirit energy coiled at the base of his skull, ready to be called. He was stronger than yesterday in every way that mattered. Then knowledge flooded his mind unbidden, weaving, thread counts. The tension of fibers pulled across a loom. It arrived fully formed, as if he'd spent years under a master clothmaker. Linen textile craft. The tribe still wore animal skins, rough, stiff, miserable in the heat. If he could produce woven cloth, it would change everything. But he needed materials, plants, the right fibers, and time he didn't have. A voice called from outside, not his name, the word that replaced it now. Sorcerer. A warrior waited with his head bowed. The main tent was his now. The tribe's sorcerer lived at the center, not the edges. Ren followed without argument. Inside, the air smelled of ash and something sacred. The former sorcerer had been cremated, while Ren lay unconscious. His body returned to flame. All that remained was a small relic, a pale stone no larger than a child's fist. Ren held it to the light. To him, it looked like nothing, just a rock. But the tribe spoke of relics the way monks spoke of saints' bones. Men of infinite merit, they said, left behind something that would not burn. He tucked it into his belt and made a silent promise. One day, when they reclaimed the ancestral land, he would build a temple worthy of the old man who had waited 63 years to pass on his fire. "I am the sorcerer of the Ember Fang tribe." The words tasted like an oath. Drac sat cross-legged on a tiger pelt, mane-like hair past his shoulders, something between a man and a lion. "Meat stock is enough for the spirit warriors," he said, "but barely. Feeding the reserves on top of that bleeds us dry within the month. 6 reserve soldiers, that was all. Before the migration, there had been 26. 20 taken by the Iron Viper tribe, dragged away in ropes while the Emberfang fled, dead or enslaved. No one knew which was worse. A rough map was scratched into the dirt floor. The Iron Viper sat far to the east, on fertile land, with river access. The Emberfang had settled in the barren flats where nothing grew tall, safe in the way that starvation was safe. No enemy would march across dead land for what little they had, but the distance that protected them also starved them. Hunting parties ranged farther each day, burning energy they couldn't replace. 15 days of dried meat in storage. After that, nothing. "What about linen?" Ren asked. "Can we trade for it?" Drac almost laughed. Only large tribes produced linen, and they guarded the craft like a state secret. One roll cost 300 pounds of jerky. He stretched his arms wide to show its length, barely enough to clothe 2 people. The Emberfang had 3 pieces of jerky left to barter with after the migration stripped them of everything. 300 pounds for a scrap of cloth, and the knowledge to make it sat right there in Ren's head. Every step, from fiber to thread to fabric, a monopoly built on ignorance. He intended to break it. He set the linen aside and chose a simpler goal first. Ensure the tribe had enough meat to survive. Everything else was meaningless if they starved before he wove a single thread. He left camp with Mira trailing behind, not hunting, walking, scanning the ground for plants, grasses, anything fibrous enough to spin. She watched him with open confusion, horns catching the sunlight. "We are looking for grass, not prey." He told her what finding the right plants would mean. Cloth the tribe could wear, sleep under, and trade. She stopped questioning and started looking too, though she had no idea what she was looking for. The land was barren, scrub grass and dust, nothing with the supple fibers he needed. The worry built like water behind a dam. If he couldn't find materials, the knowledge was worthless. If the tribe had no trade goods, they had no path out of slow starvation. And he still needed to teach someone. Knowledge locked inside one skull was knowledge waiting to die. Ren stopped walking and grabbed fistfuls of his own hair. One sorcerer, borrowed knowledge. A tribe of hungry mouths, depending on choices he hadn't learned how to make. A hand pressed against his forehead, cool, firm. "You're burning up," Mira said, beneath her cow horns. "Are you sick?" "I'm fine. You were pulling your hair out." She hadn't been hiding. She'd been standing right behind him the entire time, watching with the subtlety of a thunderclap. "I wasn't eavesdropping," she said flatly. "I was openly listening. The chieftain ordered me to protect you while the spirit warriors hunt. I am the strongest of the reserve soldiers. No bluff in those red eyes." Ren studied her, then let the tension leave his shoulders. He told her about the previous assistant sorcerer, the one who had died defending the tribe during the migration. The role was empty. He needed someone sharp enough to learn fast and hardworking enough to carry what was coming. Someone he could teach the linen craft to before it died with him. Mira straightened her back and pointed at herself. "I can do it." Ren looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "No, I need someone smart and hardworking." Her mouth fell open. The insult landed like a slap, and for one heartbeat, the strongest reserve soldier in the Emberfang tribe looked like she might cry, but she didn't. She set her jaw and glared at him with the kind of stubborn fury that said this conversation was far from over. The question came that evening, when the fire had burned low. Braun leaned toward Drac. "Why hasn't the shaman chosen a priestess?" Drac frowned. "A what?" "A woman who serves beside the shaman, tends the rites, keeps the sacred tools. Every shaman before him had one." Drac said nothing. Then his gaze drifted to where Mira sat, sharpening her blade, and something clicked behind his red eyes. He found her the next morning. "You've been close to the shaman," Drac said flatly. "You should become his priestess. Most girls in this tribe would jump at it." Mira went still. "But Daddy, do you dislike him?" She thought about it. She did not hate Ren. There was something steady about him that made the world feel less like it was falling apart. "I don't hate him," she admitted. Then it settled. No. The word came out like a blade. Her eyes burned, and for a moment, she looked exactly like her father. "I will be a spirit warrior. I will kill every last one of the Iron Viper tribe for what they took from us. That is my path." A daughter's grief dressed up as rage. Drac recognized it because he carried the same thing. He did not push further. The trail wound through unfamiliar forest. Ren walked it with Mira at his side. "Are you sure about the direction?" "We're close." She stopped. Through the trees, a thatched hut sat in a clearing near the sound of running water, the kind of place someone chose when they preferred solitude over safety. Mira called out. A soft voice answered from inside. They stepped through the doorway. A girl knelt on the packed earth floor, hands folded, dressed in simple mended cloth. But what stopped Ren cold were the ears, soft and pointed, the color of autumn leaves rising from her hair. Behind her, a tail of the same warm orange curled against the floor. She looked up with calm, knowing eyes. "It must be her," Ren murmured. The girl with the fox ears said nothing. She simply watched them with the patience of someone who had been waiting a long time for visitors and did not mind that they had finally come. The girl with the fox ears said nothing. She simply knelt there, tail curled against the packed earth, watching them with eyes that held no fear, only a quiet exhaustion that ran deeper than the body. Ren crouched at the doorway. The tribal marks on her skin were fading. She was not eating enough for her body to sustain them. "She's starving," he said. Mira nodded. "Her name is Lena. Her parents are dead. She was living with her aunt, but her aunt got pregnant. Lena moved out here alone so the baby would have enough food. Gave up her shelter so someone else's child could eat." Ren understood that kind of choice. A memory stirred. Rain on stone steps. A child standing outside an orphanage with nothing. He buried it. "She's coming back with us." Inside the hut, an older woman was fussing over Lena. "A girl like you should be staying at Braun's house. You're beautiful, your parents were important, and the shaman still hasn't chosen a priestess." She leaned closer. "Don't let these chances pass you by." Lena's fox ears flattened. "The shaman would never want someone like me." "Why not? I make mistakes. I'm shy. I freeze when people look at me." The door slammed open. Mira stood in the frame, eyes blazing. "You want to be a priestess?" Lena flinched. "Mira, I didn't say, if you do, say it yourself. Don't let someone else say it for you." Silence. Beneath Mira's anger was something that looked like hurt. The priestess role meant standing beside the shaman, and Mira had chosen a different path. Blood and vengeance. She could not walk both. Ren stepped in before it broke apart. Nobody is forcing anyone. If you want to become a priestess, that's your choice, not hers, not mine. He turned to leave. But I need someone who can learn to write. Can you write? Every person in the room stared at him as if he had spoken in a dead language. No one here can write, Lena whispered. Then you'd be the first. He walked out. Behind him, Lena sat frozen, something trembling behind her ribs that she did not yet have a name for. They were halfway down the trail when a voice rang out. Wait! Lena stood at the edge of the clearing, breathing hard, foxtail rigid. Her eyes were wet, her jaw was set, and every line of her body shook. Shaman, I want to be a priestess. No hesitation. Just a girl who had spent her life being too afraid to want anything, finally wanting something badly enough to say it out loud. Ren nodded. Good. They did not make it far before trouble found them. The scouting party burst from the tree line, carrying Tal on Drax's back. Blood everywhere. A wound across Tal's stomach so deep, no man should have to look at it twice. Tal's face was the color of ash. A beast got him, Drax said through clenched teeth. The withered kind. Bark for skin. Came out of nowhere. Tal's lips moved. Chieftain, I won't make it. Give my dried meat to my boy. He should awaken as a spirit warrior this year. A dying man's last wish. Not for himself, but for his son. Where's the bone tablet? Drax shouted. Braun stepped forward. I didn't bring it. I brought the shaman. Drax's eyes went wide. You brought him into the wild without the tablet? Put him down, Ren said. Something in his voice cut through the shouting. They laid Tal on the ground. Ren knelt, placed his hands over the torn flesh, and swallowed hard. Green light poured from his palms. Soft at first, then it deepened, and the wound began to close. Skin knitting over muscle, blood retreating. 5 seconds. Silence. He did it again, and again, 3 times total. When it was over, Tal's stomach was whole. New skin, pink and tender, where a death sentence had been moments before. No one spoke. Since when? Drax said slowly. Can you do that? The old shaman's teachings. It came through the inheritance. A lie. The only answer he would ever give. The truth. The thing humming inside him like a second heartbeat, whispering numbers in a voice only he could hear. That was his alone. Drax looked at the wound, then at Ren. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not just gratitude, the look of a man who has just realized the person in front of him might save them all. Shaman, take me to the water source. There's something you need to see. Ren stood. Lena fell into step behind him, quiet as a shadow, and for the first time since she had spoken her choice aloud, she did not look afraid. They walked deeper into the forest, and the trees swallowed them whole. The forest closed around them like a fist. Drax led the way, cutting through undergrowth with a silence that seemed wrong for a man his size. Braun flanked the left. A third warrior brought up the rear. In the middle walked Ren, and half a step behind him, Lena, her fox ears swiveling at every cracking branch. Mira had not been invited. She appeared at the edge of camp, just as they were leaving, arms crossed, chin high. Drax told her to go back. She told Drax she would rather fight every beast in the forest than sit around weaving baskets. The argument lasted 4 seconds before she fell into step beside them, and Drax pretended it had never happened. Ren hid a smile. Some battles were not worth fighting. They walked for hours. Ren used the time to ask questions. The linen plants I need. Have you found any? Drax shook his head. Nothing. We've searched every ridge within a day's march. There's a tribe that grows them. The Pale Elm Tribe. How far? 10 days. Maybe more. 10 days through wilderness crawling with beasts. That door was shut for now. Ren filed it away and moved on. How many people do the large tribes have? The biggest? Over 10,000? Mira stopped walking. 10,000? Drax nodded, and the number hung in the air like a verdict. The Emberfang tribe had 72 souls. 72 against 10,000. The gap was not a gap. It was an ocean. We'll get there, Ren said. He meant it, but he also knew the math. Babies took years to grow. He did not have years. We need to bring in outsiders, people with nowhere else to go. Drax was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, and his voice carried something Ren had not heard before. Vulnerability. Shaman, there's something you should know about me. He touched the curved red horns on his head. I'm not pure-blooded. My ancestors weren't fully human. They had beast blood, horns, claws, different eyes. Some tribes call us humanoids. He paused. Some tribes kill us on sight. Braun said nothing. His silence confirmed it. He was the same. Ren looked at Drax's horns, at Mira's small curved ones, at Braun's rough stone gray skin. He had noticed, of course. He had simply never cared. Why would I reject you? Ren said. Where I come from, there were no humanoids. But if there had been, I think I would have found them fascinating. He glanced at Mira without meaning to. Her horns caught the light. She looked away fast, but not before the color rushed to her face. Drax caught it. A grin broke across his scarred mouth, wide. knowing, absolutely shameless. He winked at his daughter. Mira's ears went red. She walked faster and did not speak for the next mile. A man who could kill a beast with his bare hands, reduced to playing matchmaker. The world never changed, no matter how primitive. Braun returned from scouting ahead, crouched low, voice barely above a breath. "We're close. Stay quiet." The mood snapped like a bowstring. Every joke, every gentle word, every moment of warmth, gone. Drax's eyes went flat. Mira's hand drifted to the blade at her hip. Even Lena pressed closer, her tail stiff and bristling. They took the long way around. Drax explained in whispers that the direct path would force them to run if something went wrong, and Ren and Lena could not match a spirit warrior's sprint. So they circled wide, adding an hour to buy safety. Halfway there, they crossed a dried stream bed. Ren knelt and dug his fingers into the mud. Bone, dry, not a drop. "When did this dry up?" he asked. "Before we arrived," Drax said. "Dry season. 50 days until the rains come." 50 days. The tribe could not last 50 days, hauling water through beast territory. They followed the dead stream. In the soft earth beside it, Ren saw a footprint the size of a man's head. Deep, fresh, long-fanged black tiger, Drax murmured. "Hunts at night. We're safe for now." For now. Those two words carried a weight that pressed against Ren's chest like a stone. The lake appeared through the trees, and hope died on sight. 500 or 600 paces across. Still water, dark as iron, beautiful if you ignored what lived in it. Something massive shifted beneath the surface. A ridge of armored scales broke the waterline, each one thick as a shield, gray and ancient. The creature did not surface fully. It did not need to. Its presence alone was enough to turn the air cold. "Pure blood beast," Drax said. "Stone-armored crocodile. It rules this lake. Nothing comes or goes without its permission." On the shore, a dozen smaller versions basked in the sun. Each one was the length of 3 men laid end to end. Jaws like iron traps, hides rough as quarry stone. They were not sleeping. Their eyes tracked the tree line with the lazy patience of predators who had never once been prey. Ren counted them. 12, maybe more in the water. "We can't fight that," Braun said flatly. "Not even close." Drax agreed. "Water runs are all we can do. Send the warriors in fast, fill what they can carry, get out before the big one stirs. It's how we've survived so far." Mira murmured something under her breath. There has to be a better way. She was looking at Ren when she said it. So was everyone else. He stared at the lake, at the beasts, at the dried stream behind them, and the 50 days of thirst stretching ahead. Every path forward led through teeth. "Quiet," he said. "Let me think." No one in the world could have helped him in that moment. No warrior, no weapon, no ancient rite. Just a man standing at the edge of an impossible problem, refusing to walk away from it. The crocodiles watched from the shore. The dark water lapped against stone, and somewhere beneath the surface, the ruler of the lake turned slowly in the deep, patient as death itself. The crocodiles did not move. Ren did not move. For a long moment, the world was nothing but dark water and the sound of his own breathing. Then, the forest behind them screamed, not a beast, a man. A voice tearing through the canopy, raw with panic. Drax spun first, spear up, eyes slicing the shadows. Braun was already running. They found Tal on the ground, half propped against a fallen tree, blood sheeting down his side in a way that turned Ren's stomach to ice. A wound ran from his ribs to his hip, deep enough to show muscle, deep enough to kill if they stood there watching. A young warrior knelt beside him, pressing both hands against the gash like he could hold a man's life in with his palms alone. "Hold on," Drax said, dropping to one knee. His voice was iron, but his hands shook. Braun went to get supplies from the tribe. "You hold on, Tal. That's an order." Tal coughed. Blood flecked his lips. He tried to smile and failed. "Leave me," he rasped. "My blood's going to bring every beast in this forest down on your heads." He gripped Drax's wrist with a strength that should not have been possible for a dying man. "My jerky? Give it to my son. He'll need the strength when it's his turn to become a spirit warrior." A father's last words are never about himself. Drax's eyes glistened. He said nothing. He did not need to. The refusal was written in every line of his body. A crash in the undergrowth. Every weapon came up. Drax's arm shot forward, then stopped. "Don't attack," a voice barked. "It's me." Naya burst through the brush, breathing hard, eyes wild. She took one look at the blood, and her expression shifted from alarm to fury. "Are you out of your minds?" she hissed. "You brought the shaman out here, into beast territory? If something happens to him, we lose everything." Drax opened his mouth to argue. Ren stepped past him. "I came because I chose to come," Ren said quietly. He knelt beside Tal, and the smell of blood hit him like a wall. The wound was worse up close, ragged, deep, the flesh torn rather than cut. Any normal man would have been dead already, but Tal was no normal man. A spirit warrior's body was something else entirely, clinging to life with a stubbornness that bordered on impossible. Ren placed his hands above the wound. He did not chant. He did not close his eyes. He simply focused, the way a man focuses when there is only one thing left in the world that matters, and let the ancient gift move through him. Light pooled between his fingers, faint at first, then steady, warm as embers. The flesh beneath his hands stirred, knit, closed like a mouth shutting. Braun arrived mid-healing and froze. His eyes went wide, healing without incantation, without ritual preparation. He had never seen anything like it. None of them had. The wound was deep. One pass was not enough. Ren repeated the gift, slower this time, more deliberate, feeling the tissue seal layer by layer until the gash was nothing but a thin silver line on Tal's skin. Then, even that faded. Silence. The kind that comes after a miracle no one was ready for. Tal sat up. He stared at his side, touched the place where death had been carving its name moments ago, and found only smooth skin. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Some things are too large for words. "You're going back to the tribe," Drac told him. "I can still fight. You were dying 30 seconds ago. Walk it off on the way home." Drac jerked his chin at the young warrior. "Take him. Make sure he actually gets there and doesn't wander off to wrestle something." Tal protested. Drac ignored him. It was the old rhythm between them, the kind of argument that is really just two men saying they care about each other in the only language they know. After Tal was gone, the forest felt heavier. Drac sat on a rock and stared at the ground. "He's one of the strongest warriors we have," he said. "Peak of what a junior spirit warrior can reach, and a single beast did that to him." He looked at Ren. "That's what we're up against out here, every single day." The words landed hard. Ren did not try to soften them. There was nothing to soften. The truth was simple and brutal. They were small, they were few, and the world wanted to eat them alive. Naya turned to Drac. "We should escort the shaman back. Now." "No," Ren said. Every head turned. "I need to see the water source. I need to understand it, the terrain, the beasts, the distances. If I go back now, I go back with nothing, and the tribe stays thirsty for another 50 days. "There are beasts everywhere between here and the lake," Naya said. "You're not a warrior. If something charges, we can't guarantee, then don't guarantee it." Ren's voice was calm, but beneath it ran something harder than steel. "The tribe doesn't need guarantees. It needs water, and I am the only one who can figure out how to get it without sending warriors to die. No one who risks nothing ever builds anything worth keeping." Naya stared at him for a long moment. Then she exhaled through her nose, adjusted the grip on her spear, and stepped aside. They moved on. The forest shifted around them as the night deepened. Fireflies drifted between the trees in lazy golden spirals, and Ren followed their light without thinking. Little lanterns in the dark, guiding him towards something he could not yet name. Mira fell into step beside him. She held out a round, pale fruit. "What's that?" Ren asked. "Sap fruit. It holds water inside. Squeeze it and drink." He took it. The juice was cool and sweet, and it hit his dry throat like rain on cracked earth. He looked at Mira with genuine admiration. "You've been carrying this the whole time?" She shrugged one shoulder, the way people do when they are trying very hard not to look pleased. Ren shook his head. Here he was, the shaman, the man who was supposed to have all the answers, and a girl with horns was the one keeping them hydrated. The world had a sense of humor after all. Ahead, Drac raised his fist. Everyone stopped. "We're here," he said. The lake stretched before them, black and still, its surface holding the stars like scattered bones. The crocodiles were out there somewhere, patient as stone, and Ren stood at the water's edge with nothing but a plan forming in the dark corners of his mind. Fragile, unfinished, but alive. It would have to be enough. Dawn broke pale and cold over the lake, and with it came clarity, the kind that only arrives after a night spent staring into dark water with nothing but questions. Ren crouched at the tree line and studied the shore. The crocodiles were still there, thick-scaled and motionless, sprawled across the rocks like they owned every grain of sand. Across the water, movement in the brush, low shapes slinking between the trunks. Deadwood wolves. Drac saw them too. His jaw tightened. "One of those put a gash in Tal yesterday," he muttered. "And there's a whole pack of them between us and the far bank." Mira stepped closer, spear angled low. "The crocodiles are worse. There are too many. Even if we sent every warrior we have, the losses would gut us. A man does not conquer a river by fighting the current. He finds where the water wants to go." Ren said nothing for a long time. He watched the wolves pace. He watched the crocodiles bask. He watched the way the ground sloped away from the lake's edge toward a patch of low scrub choked with wild grass. Then he stood. "We're not going to fight them," he said. "We're going to dig." Drac looked at him like he had spoken a language no one in the tribe had ever heard. Dig, Bronn repeated, tilting his head. Ren pointed toward the depression, a stretch of soft earth sitting lower than the lake itself, no more than 10 paces from the waterline. This lake didn't appear from nowhere. Rainwater feeds it from above. Groundwater feeds it from below. If we dig deep enough right there, water will seep in on its own. No crocodiles, no wolves, no warriors bleeding out in the mud. He knelt and dragged a line in the dirt with his finger. A well. We dig down, line it with stones, let the soil filter the water clean. Then we cover it so the beasts never even know it exists. Bronn cracked his knuckles. I'll dig. He said it the way a man says he will move a mountain. Not because he believes it is easy, but because someone has to. He dropped into the depression and began tearing earth with his bare hands, soil flying in dark arcs behind him. A spirit warrior's strength turned the ground to nothing. Within minutes, the hole was waist deep. Within an hour, it was deeper than a man was tall. Then Bronn stopped. He looked down at his feet and grinned, the first real grin Ren had seen from him since the march began. Water, he called up. There's water coming in, muddy at first, brown and silty, pooling slow around Bronn's ankles. But it was there. The earth itself was offering up what the lake had guarded behind teeth and scales. Ren had them line the pit with flat stones, then cover the opening with branches and brush until it looked like nothing more than a patch of forest floor, hidden, safe, a secret between the tribe and the ground beneath their feet. But a well alone was not enough. The tribe was far. Warriors could not haul water back and forth every day without exhausting themselves, the same trap they had been caught in before. Mira was the one who handed him the answer without knowing it. She brought a length of hollow wood she had cut for kindling, a tube as long as her arm, naturally empty inside, the walls thick and sturdy. Ren turned it over in his hands. He held it up to his eye and peered through the hole. Then he laughed, short, sharp, disbelieving. If we connect enough of these end to end, he said slowly, all the way from the well back to the village, on a downward slope, the water flows itself. There are moments when the future cracks open like an egg, and everyone standing nearby can feel the warmth of what is about to hatch. Drac stared at the hollow log. Mira stared at Ren. Bronn climbed out of the hole, caked in mud to his chest, and stared at all of them. Pipes, Ren said. We build pipes. They returned to the village as the last light bled from the sky. Drac, Bronn, and Mira split off immediately to cut more hollow logs before darkness swallowed the forest entirely. Ren's legs ached. His stomach had been empty since yesterday. He could not remember the last time he had eaten. He ducked through the flap of his tent and stopped. Everything had changed. New hides lined the floor. The fire pit was wider, ringed with fresh stones. The air smelled like dried grass and something faintly sweet. And standing in the middle of it, clutching a bundle of hay like a shield, was Lena. She flinched when she saw him, her fox ears pressed flat against her head. You're back, she whispered. Then, louder, steadier, as if reminding herself to be brave. Tal's uncle sent the hides. His son fixed the fire. And I cleaned everything. I'll be staying here, as your priestess, if you'll allow it. Her pink eyes held the same expression Ren had seen in stray animals. Desperate hope wrapped in the certainty of rejection. Stay, he said simply. She exhaled like she had been holding her breath since morning. Lena moved quickly after that, stoking the fire, arranging things with a nervous efficiency that made Ren suspect she had rehearsed every gesture. When she brought him water in a wooden cup, he took it, looked at it, and set it down. Boil it first. She blinked. Boil it? There are things living in raw water that you can't see. Tiny creatures that crawl into your gut and eat you from the inside. He said it plainly, the way he said everything, not to frighten, but because the truth deserved to be spoken without decoration. Lena's ears drooped. She stared at the cup like it had betrayed her. When Mira arrived moments later with strips of dried meat, Lena pulled her aside, tail low, voice barely a whisper. I think I made a mistake. Some lessons only hurt because they matter, and Lena was about to learn that serving a shaman who carried the knowledge of another world meant that nothing, not even a cup of water, would ever be simple again. Mira appeared in the tent opening not long after, dried meat still in her hands, her expression caught between confusion and concern. She thinks she ruined something, Mira said quietly, glancing toward Lena. The water, she's terrified. Ren looked past her to where Lena stood outside, fox ears pressed flat. The girl looked like she was waiting for a verdict. Come inside, both of you. They sat across from him by the fire, and Ren spoke plainly, not the way a shaman delivers a prophecy, but the way a man explains a danger he has seen before. There are creatures living in it, in every stream, every cup drawn from the river. Too small to see, too small to taste, but they breed inside your gut, until your body cannot fight them anymore. People get fevers, stomach cramps. Some recover, some do not. Mira's voice cracked. 2 summers ago, 3 children fell sick. Cramps, fever, couldn't hold water. 2 survived, 1 didn't. The invisible war is always the deadliest. Not the enemy charging across the field, but the one already inside the walls, wearing the face of something harmless. Boiling kills them, Ren said. Every last one. Heat is the weapon. He looked at Lena. You didn't make a mistake. You didn't know. None of you did. He held up the animal hide he had been sketching on. A tube drawn in charcoal, wide at the top, narrow at the bottom, 3 layers marked inside. A filter, charcoal, fine sand, coarse sand. Pour water through and the filth stays behind. Build this by tomorrow and tell every person in this tribe, no one drinks raw water again. Every drop gets boiled. That is the law. Mira grabbed the hide, tucked it under her arm, and pushed through the tent flap without another word. Fire first, questions later. Ren watched her go, just like Drac. The tent was quiet then, just the crackle of the fire, and Lena positioning strips of dried meat over charcoal instead of open flame. The meat darkened, slow and even, fat hissing against the hot stone. When she handed him the first piece, Ren stopped chewing. This is good. Best I've had since I arrived in this world. Lena's ears lifted. A cautious smile broke across her face, the first real one he had seen from her. Her stomach growled, loud. She flinched. You haven't eaten, Ren said. The priestess eats only what the shaman gives her. That is the rule. He tore the remaining half and held it out. She ate it in a single bite, cheeks full, then looked immediately ashamed. He roasted 3 more strips and set them before her. Eat all of them. That's too much. If you don't eat, you don't sleep here tonight. The kind of threat that carried no weight and all the warmth in the world. Lena's tail swayed, and she picked up the first strip with the quiet ferocity of someone hungry for longer than she would ever admit. They talked while they ate. Ren asked about salt, almost none left. He told her to save what remained for the warrior trainees. But you are the shaman. You matter more than they do. Some things a man cannot argue against, because the person saying them believes it down to the marrow of their bones. I'll trade for more soon. The Pale Elk tribe has salt. He looked at her across the fire, small in the flickering light, pink eyes soft with an emotion she did not have words for. This tribe is going to get better, I promise. So stop skipping meals. Lena ate her 3rd piece without being told. Drac returned at dusk with 300 hollow logs, and exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Braun said they were still short. Drac waved him off. They would carve the joints at the source. Tal volunteered to stay behind and guard the tribe while the others worked. Then, Mira found her father and told him everything. The creatures, the sickness, the deaths no one had understood. Drac listened without moving. His hands closed into fists so tight the knuckles went white. He whispered a name, his son's name. The boy had died at 3, fever and cramps, and a tiny body that gave out one night while the tribe slept. They had blamed the spirits. They had blamed the season. They had never blamed the water. A father's grief does not expire. It only waits for new reasons to burn. Drac turned to the tribe and roared. Not the roar of a chief giving orders, but the roar of a man who had just learned his son's killer had been sitting in every cup and stream for years. No one drinks water that has not been boiled. This is the shaman's command. Anyone who disobeys answers to me. Most nodded. A few grumbled. No one challenged the voice of a man carrying that much pain. Mira raised the problem. Father, the tribe has 5 stone pots. Each takes days to make. How do 70 people boil water with 5 pots? Drac looked toward the shaman's tent. I'll ask him. He'll know. 2 days. That was all it took. Ren had expected a week, but spirit warriors who believed in the work moved like nothing he had ever seen. They carved convex and concave joints into the hollow logs with impossible precision. They laid the pipes end to end along the slope he had mapped, every section angled downward, gravity doing the work that pumps had not yet been invented to do. When they opened the reservoir, the water came. It rushed through the wooden conduit and into the village with a sound like the earth exhaling. The tribe gathered and stared. The water comes to us, someone whispered, as if naming a miracle. Warriors who had hauled water on their backs for years stood perfectly still and watched it flow, free, endless, theirs. Mira smiled. This is because of our shaman. Ren shook his head. I only pointed. Every one of you built it. But he allowed himself one moment, standing at the edge of the village with running water behind him, to feel something close to pride. Clean water, delivered to the tribe's doorstep. The first real infrastructure this village had ever known. He turned to Lena. I need a new law written for the tribe. Her ears perked. What law? Ren's expression was deadly serious. Drink boiled water. The law was simple, 3 words, but changing the habits of 70 people who had drunk raw water their entire lives was something else entirely. Lena stood before a cluster of tribespeople the next morning, holding a wooden ladle in both hands, trying to explain what she barely understood herself. Invisible creatures, living in the streams, killing from the inside. A hunter spat on the ground. We eat bugs when food runs low. Bigger bugs than whatever she's talking about. Never killed me. Another shrugged. I've been drinking from that stream since I was born. Still standing. Lena's ears pressed flat against her skull. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. The words tangled somewhere between her throat and her courage. She had never been good at arguing. She had never needed to be. The shaman said, "The shaman isn't here right now. You are. And you're telling us we can't drink water unless we boil it first?" Her tail curled tight against her leg. She wanted to disappear, but then she thought of Ren, how he spoke with calm certainty, how he never raised his voice and still made the whole tribe listen. She straightened her spine. 2 summers ago, she said quietly, 3 children got sick, cramps, fever, couldn't keep anything down. Her voice wavered, but held. 2 survived, 1 didn't. Drak's son was one of them. He was 3 years old. Silence. The hunter, who had been loudest, looked away. Everyone remembered. No one had known why. The shaman says boiling kills them. Every single one. That is why this is the law. Not because it is easy, because it keeps us alive. No one argued after that. Not because they were fully convinced. Because a dead child's name still carried more weight than any skeptic's comfort. But belief did not solve the problem of stone pots. 5 pots for 70 people. Each one took days to carve from raw rock. The math was brutal. Drak brought the question to Ren that evening, Mira and Tal following close behind. Lena let them into the tent with a small nod, her composure still fragile from the morning's confrontation. Drak noticed her immediately. His red eyes narrowed. He had expected his daughter to be the one living in the shaman's tent, not the fox-eared girl from Braun's family. His jaw tightened, but he swallowed the anger. There were bigger things at stake. Shaman, the tribe doesn't have enough pots to boil water for everyone. What do? Ren didn't hesitate. He had already been thinking about it. Heat stones in the fire until they glow. Drop them into wooden barrels filled with water. The water will boil in minutes. Mira blinked. That works? Heat is heat. Doesn't matter where it comes from, the stones transfer it to the water. The creatures die just the same. Drak exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath for hours. We have stones. We have fire. We have barrels. He nodded once, already turning to leave. I'll have it running by morning. Tal stayed behind a moment longer. He knelt before Ren, fist pressed to his chest. Shaman, you saved my life when I had nothing left to give. I won't forget. Ren waved him off gently. Then guard this tribe while the others work. That's payment enough. Night fell heavy and warm. The fire crackled low inside the tent. Lena sat cross-legged, sewing a tear in an animal hide blanket with careful, practiced stitches. Ren worked beside her, scratching drawings onto a stretched hide with a charcoal stick. Plans for tomorrow, shapes she didn't recognize, symbols from a world she would never see. She watched him from the corner of her eye, the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated, the way he muttered to himself in words that weren't from any language the tribe spoke. Her eyelids grew heavy, the needle slowed. Her head dipped forward once, twice, and then she was gone. Chin resting on her chest, breathing soft and even. Ren noticed. He set down the charcoal, crossed the tent, and lifted her carefully. She weighed almost nothing. He laid her on the hay bed and pulled an animal hide over her shoulders. Lena's eyes opened the moment he turned away. She lay perfectly still, heart hammering, face burning in the dark. She pressed her lips together and did not move until his breathing slowed on the other side of the tent. Sleep did not come for her, not for a long time. Outside, Mira walked the inner patrol circle, spear resting across her shoulders. The stars were sharp and close, the way they only get when the air is clean and the world is quiet. Lena appeared from the tent, barefoot, ears twitching. Can't sleep? Mira asked. No. They stood together in the dark. Mira studied the smaller girl, the flushed cheeks, the restless tail, the way her eyes kept drifting back toward the tent. How was your first day? Lena's answer came without hesitation. He gave me 4 pieces of meat. He never raised his voice. He told me the tribe would get better. A pause. I've never been this full. Mira stared at her. 4 pieces barely fills half your stomach. It's more than I've ever been given at once. Something in Mira's chest twisted. Not pity, something sharper. She looked up at the stars and exhaled slow. You're too easily satisfied. You know that? Lena smiled, small, genuine, unreachable. Maybe, but I've never been this happy. Mira watched her walk back to the tent, bare feet silent on the cold ground. She gripped her spear tighter and resumed her patrol, jaw set, eyes burning with something she refused to name. The tribe slept, the water boiled, and somewhere inside the shaman's tent, Ren sat up in the dark, pulled a knife from his belt, and pressed the blade to his own palm. A faint glow pulsed from his hand, ancient light, warm and golden, knitting the wound shut before the blood could fall. He was practicing, healing himself over and over, pushing the ancient rites further than anyone in this tribe had ever taken them, because he knew, with a certainty that sat like iron in his gut, that the day was coming when boiled water and wooden pipes would not be enough. Something was out there, beyond the trees, beyond the river, and it was not going to wait for them to be ready.